Aren't you embarrassed by your low education? It really shows where you come from. I'd love to see what your parents look like.
I went to the final interview at a major company, and the interviewer, comparing his prestigious educational background to mine, insulted me for my lower education. It seems he's quite proud of his graduation from Harvard. I understood. I'll introduce them to you. One cannot judge someone's abilities merely by their appearance or education. The interviewer could never have imagined. He would not have expected that a thoughtless comment out of his pride would have resulted in him strangling himself. On day in September, I was challenging the final interview at a company. It was a moment where the results of my life and studies were being tested. Of course, just because I passed the final interview doesn't mean everything in life will go smoothly, nor is this the goal. But in a way, it's the culmination of my life so far.
So, John Smith, right. You want to join our company?
Fanning his resume like a fan, the interviewer glanced at me briefly. It was a displeasing look, as if he was assessing my worth. The interviewer's name was Taylor. I had seen him in the first and second interviews, but I just couldn't get along with him. Yes, your company is my top choice. My goal is to join your company and be involved in major projects that move society, I said, looking straight into Taylor's eyes.
Ha!
As if he couldn't hold back, Taylor snorted through his nose. Then he casually threw my resume on the table, leaned back in his chair, and looked up at the ceiling. Crossing his legs, Taylor looked down on me and let out a conspicuous click of his tongue.
Some people really have the wrong idea.
And that is...
Don't you get it? You didn't graduate from a prestigious university, did you? Where from? XYZ University. No, I never heard of it.
Saying that, Taylor put his feet on the table. The muddy soles of his shoes rested on my resume. The mud stuck to the white paper. It's just where the photo of my face and the school I graduated from are on my resume.
Well, I'm a Harvard grad, you know. Ever heard of Harvard?
Of course.
Right. Even someone with your education knows it. Though I guess for you, getting in would have been a pipe dream.
His voice was laced with barely concealed scorn. No, he probably had no intention of hiding his disdain. I'm sure Tyler recognized me as someone he could mock. Sometimes you meet people like this. They judge others solely by their education and think it's okay to say anything if they consider them inferior. I don't like people like that very much. It's true that my alma mater's rank isn't the highest, but I've always studied hard since I was young, and my grades.
Grades or whatever, that's not the point. I'm now talking about academic background. If you want to climb to the top in our company, education is crucial. To not be looked down upon by our clients. Harvard grads like me are valued the most.
What is he trying to say? Watching me fall silent, Taylor's unpleasant smile grew stronger.
Someone with low education like you, sorry to say, might just end up at the bottom forever?
The words that followed were unbearable. He went on about how superior he was, how he had contributed to the company, none of which needed to be discussed in an interview. By the time I was thoroughly fed up, Taylor finally took his feet off the table.
Do you really think you can make it in this company?
Yes, I've thoroughly prepared and studied for this. Definitely.
Seriously? Are you still dreaming like this? You think this is some kind of comedy club audition?
He didn't even try to hide his mockery and disdain. How can someone raised in what kind of home turn out like this? I could tell I was being looked down upon. It didn't feel good. This takes me back to when I was just a kid. Life has its ways of bringing people together. And fortune has its ups and downs. At that time, my family, or rather I should say, we were in what you'd call rock bottom. We had no money, no food, nothing to put on the table for side dishes. And everything I wore or used for school, from clothes to study materials, was secondhand. I felt shabby because of my situation, often ridiculed for being poor, and it was shameful not being able to talk back. Looking back, my parents must have had it even harder than me. They must have felt terrible not being able to provide proper meals. Back then, I was struggling and hungry every day, and I couldn't see the sacrifices my parents were making. But at some point, food started appearing more often on our table, and I got new clothes for the first time.
Just hang in there a little longer. I'll make more money. Then we can eat all the good food we want.
I remember my dad patting my head and saying that. Our living standards improved after my dad started his own business. He worked late every night, sometimes staying at the company for days to get the business on track. So, can we go out this weekend? I'd like to go to the amusement park.
The amusement park, God. Go with your mom. Sorry, but I've got work that day too.
As our family became wealthier, my dad came home less and less. He was always busy with work, even on weekend. Ironically, the better our life got, the less time we spent together as a family. Eventually, my dad didn't come back home. His company had grown.
I'm sorry. This is a crucial time for me.
I silently watched my dad pack his suitcase and leave. From that day, it was just me and my mom at home. My dad was so busy. He only came home once or twice a year. By the time I was in high school, it had been almost 2 years since his last visit. Your dad is a busy manual, my mom said so, but she looked lonely. Seeing my mom like that and my dad not coming home, I made up my mind. I wouldn't be a workaholic like my dad. I wanted to be someone who could take care of his family. When I entered high school, I started to study and take lessons in various subjects. Luckily, my family was wealthy. I could learn anything I wanted. I studied art. I had a tutor for my studies. I also attended Spanish classes and gathered a lot of reference books. All the money for this came from my dad. And the more I studied and gained knowledge, the more I understood how much effort my dad had put into starting his business and keeping it running. It wasn't a trivial struggle. It was so intense he barely had time to come home. But still, I couldn't come to admire him for that. He chose the work over his family. I didn't want to be like that. This feeling grew stronger day by day. My mom must have noticed how I felt about my dad. But she supported me without saying anything. She said, "Do what you want to do." She pushed me forward.
Knowing it would be tough, why did you go to such a low-rank college?
The interview with Taylor had ceased to be an interview long ago. It had degenerated into nothing more than an occasion for Taylor to mock my educational background. In the interview room, the two of us, Taylor and me, had no one there to stop his relentless ridicule. Honestly, I thought about just leaving then and there. But I had compelling reasons for wanting to join this company. And it was those reasons alone that kept me seated in this interview. I really wanted to study a certain subject, and I chose that university because it was close to my house. It's just my mom and me, so I didn't feel like going too far.
Study a subject. You should have focused on getting a better degree. That's why you'll always be at the bottom, you know.
I, the wise one, will teach a fool like you. His voice was dripping with such intent. I don't think so. I believe what matters more than one's educational background is what one does after joining a company.
There are always people like you who are mistaken.
Am I mistaken?
Yes, severely mistaken. Really, what kind of life must one lead to arrive at such a conclusion?
Saying this, Taylor picked up my resume again. He turned to the section on family and traced his finger over my parents' names.
Didn't your parents try to stop you? Tell you to go to a better university?
He tapped on my parents' names with his finger. Over and over, as if to emphasize his point.
Were your parents also poorly educated? Well, that explains it.
I wanted to say that it had nothing to do with them. I thought it wouldn't make any difference, so I refrained from saying anything back.
Ah, this is amusing. It's a pity we probably won't meet again. I really wanted to see the face of someone with uneducated parents.
I understood Taylor's way of thinking. I could see that he was an academic snobism. And he wanted to see my parents' faces, too. I understood.
What? Your mistake in choosing. It's too late to do anything about your low education, isn't it?
Not that. You want to see my parents' face, right?
Who? What are you talking about? I'm busy, you know.
It was true. He was busy. After all, the company Tyler works for, Smith Corporation, where I hope to join, has an annual turnover exceeding $3 billion. They were planning to start a new venture next year. I knew he was busy preparing for that. It won't take long. Let's go meet him. I also want to see my dad's face. It's been a while. The elevator ascended swiftly to the upper floors. Watching the floor indicator, Taylor looked puzzled.
Hey, John. Where are we heading for?
Don't you know what room is on the upper floors of your own company? It was a question loaded with implication, wondering if Taylor was aware.
It's not that, but ahead lies.
Before Taylor could finish his sentence, the elevator arrived at the designated floor. The top floor of the headquarters building of Smith Corporation. There was only one room there, the CEO's office. In other words, this is the room at the top of a large company with annual sales of $3 billion.
Do you realize where you are?
I know. As the elevator doors opened, Taylor, inadvertently stepping into the CEO's office, turned pale. He reached out to stop me, but I avoided his hand and stepped into the CEO's office.
Who is it? Oh.
Long time no see, Dad. Looks like you're as busy as ever.
John, today was your final interview, right?
Dad.
Taylor's face visibly paled even more. Sweat drenched from his forehead down to his chin. The CEO, my dad, turned his gaze towards Taylor.
You're from HR, right?
Yes, sir. Today, I was in charge of interviewing your son, and
Taylor's words trailed off into a whisper. It must have dawned on him too late. The person he had been belittling for his low education was the son of the CEO of the company he worked for. Yes, Tyler told me a lot of interesting stories. Taylor flinched as if scared. He kept his gaze down, trying to escape my dad's look. A single drop of sweat fell from his nose onto the carpet.
Well, you're Tyler, right? Thank you for bringing my son up here.
My dad said this in an emotionless voice.
Oh, no. Your son is very bright and,
He has always been hard working with his studies and lessons. Now, I would like to have a word alone with my son if you don't mind stepping out. We'll take care of the rest.
Oh, of course, sir. I'll excuse myself then.
A boat on the way over, or a thread of clouds hanging over hell. Tyler nodded repeatedly at my dad's words and rushed into the elevator. He likely couldn't wait to get out of there. He kept his head down the whole time as he descended to the lower floors. He never once made eye contact with me or my dad again.
Is he not feeling well? He seemed a bit off.
Well, not so much unwell. Probably just embarrassed.
I don't quite follow, but well, it's all right.
With that, my dad cut off the conversation and let out a deep sigh, as if releasing something pent up inside. He then motioned for me to join him on the sofa.
Let's talk for a bit.
Is there something to talk about? I know you've been working hard for me and Mom. I said this as I took a seat opposite my dad. This situation of a newly interviewed employee candidate having a conversation with the CEO in his office made me feel slightly amused. Such a scenario isn't something you'd find just anywhere in the world.
Indeed, but I still wanted to apologize.
Apologize? For what? My tone was sharper than I intended. It seems I haven't forgiven my dad as much as I thought I had. Sensing my feelings, my dad gave a troubled smile.
For everything, up until now.
My dad sighed again. Then he apologized to me. Even if it was for you and your mom, I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you. I think I've made you and your mom feel very lonely. Yes, my mom and I were always lonely. Even after we moved to a larger house, I had no worries about food or clothes, and I could take lessons in anything I wanted. Our living standards improved. But my mom and I were always lonely. I was lamenting the fact that we couldn't spend time together as a family. I always dreamed of going to the amusement park with my dad, mom, and me together when I was a child. Every time I saw classmates holding hands with their parents on the way home, I felt a tightness in my chest. My mom would always say, "Be patient." I still remember the loneliness in her voice. I'll never forget it for as long as I live. After all this time, you left us alone and we're just working.
You're right to feel that way. I was concerned about you guys in my own way. But yeah, you wouldn't have noticed.
My dad scratched his head as if it couldn't be helped. Concerned? How can you be concerned when you were always away on business trips?
Yeah, I suppose. But it's true. It might sound like an excuse, but…
That's when my dad mentioned several names. They were the names of the tutors and the classes I had been attending. Huh?
I was keeping an eye on you in my own way. I dropped by the classes or the tutors to ask how you were doing.
Then why?
Sounds a bit sappy, right? When I heard from your mom that you wanted to start a new hobby, I was the one looking up suitable classes or seminars.
My dad laughed, saying it even though it was unspoken. His sad laugh made my heart ache a little.
Well, it wasn't just for you. It was for the company too.
For the company?
Yes. A company is ultimately about connections between people. For example, the tutoring center you attended is mostly funded by our company.
It seems I was unaware, but my dad had been doing fatherly things in his own way. Did my mom know about this? She probably did. And she must have kept silent because my dad asked her to. So she never told me.
It was a good tutoring center, right? It would be a waste for such a place to go under. Now, even the kids of our employees get a bit of a discount there.
Essentially, it was business. The actions of a CEO of a large corporation. But behind those actions was hidden affection for me. Using company funds to overtly favor me would have been inappropriate given his position. Perhaps this was the only way he could fulfill both roles as CEO and as a dad. Right now, I don't care about the company. At least, I understand that I've grown up with my dad's support behind the scenes. You could have just told me. I've been working hard, thinking I'd surprise you by how much I've grown. My eyes felt hot, slightly teary. I looked down to hide my moist eyes.
I know. I knew you were working hard.
My dad's large hand rested on my head. My dad stroked my head as if I were a little boy. How long has it been since I've been patted on the head like this? I realize now, I always wanted my dad to pat my head again. The misunderstanding between us cleared up effortlessly, as if the years of estrangement meant nothing.
So, what do you want to do? I know you're doing well. You don't have to work at our company if you don't want to.
About that, I still want to work here.
Oh.
I've realized you're a respectable person. I was mistaken. The misunderstanding was my dad's fault, but he had been watching over me in his own way. It was just knowing that I made all the effort to stay until the final interview worthwhile. I want to be like you, so please let me learn here at the company. I said that, and my dad replied pleasedly, I understood. By the way, I want to change the subject. Now that I had the chance to sit down and talk with my dad, or rather, the CEO, there was something else I wanted to discuss.
Something on your mind.
My dad straightened up and leaned in to look at my face. Looking into my eyes, he sensed it was time for a serious conversation. There's something I want to talk about. It's about Taylor, who was in charge of my interview earlier. I told my dad about Taylor's actions. He was arrogant, inappropriate for an interviewer, put his foot on my resume, was an academic snobism, and made comments that mocked me and my parents. After hearing everything, my dad stroked his chin, making a troubled face. Then he stood up from the reception seat and picked up a document from the massive pile on his desk.
I'd like to keep this between us, but there have been reports about his work behavior.
It seems Taylor has been falsely claiming business outings for personal leisure, repeatedly engaging in bullying and harassment, taking company property home without permission, and leaking confidential information.
Indeed, he has a high education, but he seems to be quite dishonest. I shouldn't be talking to you about this.
No, I kind of thought he might be that kind of person.
Well, I'll handle it from here. Thanks for letting me know.
My dad said so, placing the document back on the table and adopting a serious expression.
Listen, John, it may be redundant for me to say this, but there's something I want you to remember.
What's that?
Be sincere. To lead and inspire others, being trusted is paramount. Remember that, and you can rise from the depths, just as I did.
My dad's face was lined with fine wrinkles. It had been a while since I looked at my dad's face so closely. Each wrinkle seemed to speak of the hardships he had endured. Later, I was informed that Taylor had been fired. Subsequently, I joined my dad's company as a new employee. Starting from the bottom, of course. Being the CEO's son didn't afford me any special treatment, nor did I want it from my colleagues or superiors. Like my dad used to do, I want to build my career from scratch on my own. Whether I can become as respectable a CEO as my dad is still uncertain. Embarrassingly, it was only after entering the workforce that I truly understood the challenges of working. However, that was in the early years. Now I've grown accustomed to the work, and it feels as though I've reached my dad's stature, if only by the tips of my fingers.
Heard you led another project to success. The rumors about you being the next CEO are getting louder.
My colleague, Michael, slapped my shoulder. He was a friend who never changed his attitude towards me, even after knowing I was the CEO's son. If I were to become the next CEO, he's exactly the kind of person I'd want on my team. It was all thanks to everyone's cooperation. Yes, it's a load off my shoulders. The past few months have been hectic, with hardly any time for a break. Now, with the project's success, I could finally take some well-deserved time off. I quickly packed my things into my bag, ready to leave on time.
You seem happy. Got a date?
No, it's not a date. My family and I are having dinner together at home tonight. My dad must already be at home, waiting with my mom in the house where I grew up.
Oh, you're early. I thought you'd be late.
Arriving home, I found my dad in the living room. But my mom was not there. Where's Mom?
She went to shopping. We ran out of some seasonings.
I see. Should I start preparing dinner? She shouldn't be long if she just went out for seasonings. In the kitchen, vegetables and meat were neatly arranged on plates. It seems tonight's dinner will be chicken stew.
Seems like you've been busy with a project lately.
Yeah? How about you, Dad?
Easy for me. The young ones have grown up, and now I can relax at home like this.
A few years after I joined the company, which is to say, at the beginning of this year, my dad finally stopped his long commutes. He's getting on in years. It seems he's started to prepare for retirement, leaving the management of the company to his employees. His charisma, which he has cultivated, has not diminished, and he must not be as laid back as he says. It's good if you can relax. I deliberately don't point it out. I understand now that my dad is not one to complain or show weakness, given his reserved nature.
I'm managing to relax. That's what I've been working towards all these years, after all.
Then I'm glad. My dad's efforts have finally paid off. Now it's my turn. Like him, I want to be someone admired by many. Moreover, I want to create an environment where I can truly value my family without being consumed by work. I don't have anyone to be my partner at the moment.
I'd like to see my grandchildren soon.
You know, saying that could be considered harassment these days. Oops, I'll have to be careful then. He jokes, laughing lightly. The sound of the front door signals someone's arrival. It seems my mom has come back.